My friends, I turned 94 this spring. I spent more than 60 years as a family doctor. I've treated thousands of patients. I've watched children grow old. I've sat beside hospital beds in moments of fear and moments of peace. And after all those years in medicine, I've come to understand something surprising. Your home shapes your mind more than any prescription I've ever written, especially after 70. When you're young, a house is just a place to sleep. But when you grow older, it becomes something else. It becomes an extension of your inner world. Let me explain what I mean. In my 60 years as a family doctor, I prescribed many things: tablets, therapies, routines. But there is one form of medicine I rarely wrote on a prescription pad, and yet it may be one of the most powerful of all: light. At 94 years old, I can tell you this with certainty. The light in your home affects your mind more than most people realize. When I was still practicing, I began noticing a pattern. Patients who lived in bright, sunlit homes often carried a different energy into my office. Their posture was lighter, their speech was clearer. Even when they had health problems, there was a quiet resilience in them. But those who spent most of their days in dim rooms, curtains drawn, lamps barely glowing, often struggled with fatigue, poor sleep, and low mood. Many believed they were simply getting old. But I suspected something else. You see, sunlight speaks directly to the brain. It helps regulate sleep cycles. It supports mood. It tells your body, it is morning. It is time to live. When your home is dark for long hours, your body receives a different message. It begins to slow. Your energy dips. Your thoughts feel heavier. You may not even notice the change at first. It happens quietly. I learned this lesson personally after my wife passed. For months, I kept the curtains half closed. The house felt safer that way, smaller, contained. But it also felt still. One morning, I opened every curtain in the house. Sunlight poured across the floors, onto the furniture, across the photographs on the wall. Dust particles shimmered in the air like tiny stars. And something inside me shifted. I stood a little straighter. I breathed a little deeper. I felt present again. Now, each morning I open the windows before I make my tea, even in winter, even on cloudy days. Natural light, even soft light, awakens something inside the human spirit. If you are over 70, I urge you, don't let your home grow dim without realizing it. Sit near a window while you read. Move your favorite chair closer to the light. Replace heavy curtains with something lighter if you can. Light is not decoration. It is instruction to your brain. It says, you are still here. The day has begun. There is still warmth to feel. At 94, I no longer underestimate simple things. And light is one of the simplest medicines we have. Open the curtains tomorrow morning. Let the day find you. In all my years as a doctor, I learned that not all stress announces itself loudly. Some stress is quiet. It does not raise your blood pressure in a dramatic moment. It does not cause sudden pain. Instead, it lingers in the background, subtle, steady, draining. Clutter is that kind of stress. When I was still visiting elderly patients in their homes, I began noticing something. Those who lived in crowded spaces, tables covered in papers, hallways lined with boxes, drawers stuffed with objects long forgotten, often carried a certain restlessness. They would sit down but never quite relax. Their eyes moved constantly. Their thoughts seemed scattered. At first, I attributed it to age, but over time, I realized the environment was part of the diagnosis. As we grow older, The brain processes visual information more slowly. This is natural. But when every surface holds something, when every corner competes for attention, the mind never fully rests. It continues sorting, scanning, deciding, even when you are unaware of it. Clutter is not just physical, it is cognitive noise. I experienced this myself after retirement. Over decades, I had accumulated journals, medical notes, old conference materials, letters from patients, files I told myself I might review one day. They filled shelves in my study. I rarely touched them. But each time I entered that room, I felt a subtle weight, a quiet tension in my chest. I would sit at my desk and feel distracted without knowing why. One afternoon at the age of 91, I began clearing one shelf, just one. I opened each folder. Some I kept. Many I recycled. I paused over certain letters and allowed myself a moment of gratitude before letting them go. By the end of the week, half the shelves were empty, and the room felt different, not larger in size, but lighter in spirit. Here is what I learned. We often hold on to objects because they represent moments, people, identities we fear losing. A coat that no longer fits, a stack of magazines from years ago, a drawer filled with small items that once had purpose. But sometimes we are not preserving memories. We are preserving unfinished emotions. And when your home is filled with unresolved fragments of the past, your mind carries them too. This does not mean you must live in a bare room. It means you should live among what brings peace. Start small, one drawer, one corner of a table. Pick up each item and ask yourself quietly, does this still serve my present life? If the answer is no, release it gently. You are not erasing your history. You are honoring your present. At 94, I understand that energy matters more than possessions. A tidy surface gives the mind permission to rest. An open walkway invites movement. A cleared table invites calm conversation. Clutter does not shout, it whispers. But over time, those whispers become exhaustion. Give your mind the gift of space. You may discover that when the room breathes easier, so do you. Silence is a curious thing. In my younger years, I longed for it. After long days at the clinic, filled with ringing telephones, hurried conversations, and the steady rhythm of responsibility, silence felt like rest. And for many years it was. But after I turned 80, and especially after my wife passed, silence changed its character. It no longer felt like rest. It began to feel like absence. As a physician, I saw this in many of my older patients. Those living alone would often tell me, "Doctor, everything is fine." Their blood work looked stable, their medications were in order, yet something was dimming inside them. When I visited their homes, I understood why. The rooms were too quiet, no music, no conversation, no television murmuring in the background, just the ticking of a clock and the faint hum of appliances. You may not realize this, but the human brain is not designed for prolonged emptiness of sound. Gentle noise, music, conversation, even the natural sounds of birds or distant traffic, keeps the mind oriented to the present moment. It reassures you that life continues around you. When a home becomes deeply silent, the mind turns inward. And when the mind turns inward for too long, it can wander into regret, worry, or loneliness. I experienced this myself. There were evenings when the house felt so still that my own footsteps sounded unfamiliar. My thoughts grew louder in that quiet. Memories replayed more intensely. It wasn't grief alone. It was isolation amplified by silence. So I made a small decision. Each morning I began playing soft music while I prepared breakfast. old songs from my younger days, melodies that once filled this very home with laughter. The difference was immediate. The air felt warmer. The walls felt less distant. Sometimes I turn on a radio program just to hear voices discussing ordinary things. I may not listen closely, but the presence of human sound comforts the spirit in ways medicine never could. I even speak out loud occasionally. Simple things like, "Time for tea," or "That smells good." It may seem foolish, but it reminds me I am still part of a living world. Silence is not the enemy, but it should not be your only companion. Open a window and let the outside world reach you. Call a friend and let conversation echo through your rooms. Play one song that reminds you of joy. Sound is subtle nourishment for the aging mind. And at 94, I have learned this. A home that breathes with gentle sound keeps the heart from feeling alone. One of the quiet fears that comes with age is the feeling of losing control. Control over your schedule, control over your health, control over your independence. After decades as a physician, I can tell you this fear is rarely spoken aloud, but it lives in many hearts. What most people don't realize is that your home can either strengthen your sense of control or slowly weaken it. There was a period in my late 80s when I stopped adjusting anything in my house. Furniture stayed where it had always been. Decorations gathered dust. Pathways narrowed as small items accumulated. Without noticing, I began moving less. When your environment feels fixed and unchangeable, something inside you begins to feel the same way. Then one afternoon, I decided to move my armchair closer to the window. It wasn't easy at 90 years old. I took my time, shifted it inch by inch, cleared a small table beside it, adjusted the lamp so the light fell exactly where I read. It was a small act, but it stirred something powerful inside me. I wasn't just moving furniture. I was reminding myself, I still choose. I still shape my surroundings. That matters more than we think. An open walkway encourages movement. A well-placed chair invites reading. A small plant on a table invites care and attention. These are not decorative decisions. They are signals to your brain that you remain engaged in your life. When you personalize your space, you reinforce dignity. When you simplify your layout, you encourage motion. And movement keeps both body and mind alive. You may not control the passing of time, but you can control the arrangement of your living room. And sometimes that small act of control restores more confidence than any advice a doctor can give. At 94, I have learned this. A thoughtfully arranged home quietly strengthens the spirit. And the spirit, when strengthened, carries the body further than we expect. By the time you reach your 90s, your home is no longer just a place. It is a museum of your life. Every photograph on the wall, every worn armchair, every dish tucked into a cabinet carries a story. Some stories bring warmth. Others bring an ache you cannot always explain. As a doctor, I spent years helping people manage physical pain. But I came to understand that emotional pain often lingers in the quiet spaces of a home. After my wife passed, I kept everything exactly as it was. Her coat still hung by the door. Her gardening gloves rested on the shelf. For a long time, I believed that leaving those things untouched was a way of honoring her. But each morning when I saw them, I felt a heaviness settle in my chest. Not love, not comfort. Heaviness. It took me years to understand that holding on to every object was not the same as holding on to the love we shared. One afternoon, I chose a few items that truly brought warmth. A photograph of us laughing in the garden, her favorite teacup, one soft sweater she wore often. The rest I gently let go. I expected the house to feel emptier. Instead, it felt calmer. Here is what I have learned at 94. Your home should support your heart, not quietly burden it. Memories are precious, but they must breathe. When every surface holds a reminder of loss, your nervous system remains in a subtle state of grief. The mind responds to what the eyes see every day. You do not need to erase your past. You simply need to curate it. Keep what makes you smile. Keep what reminds you of growth, gratitude, resilience. Release what only pulls you backward. Your life is not over because certain chapters have closed. You are still writing. Let your home reflect not only who you were, but who you still are. Because peace at this stage of life is more valuable than possession. And sometimes, peace begins with choosing which memories stay in the room. After a lifetime in medicine, after nearly a century of living, I can tell you this: your home is not just walls and furniture. It is the atmosphere your mind breathes every day. If it is dark, heavy, silent, and cluttered, your spirit will slowly reflect that. But if it is bright, open, alive, and intentional, your mind will follow. Open the curtains, clear a small space, play a familiar song, move a chair. Play something beautiful where your eyes can rest on it each morning. You cannot stop aging, but you can shape the environment in which you age. And sometimes that makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to an old doctor. If something I said resonated with you, tell me, what small change will you make in your home this week? I may be 94, but I am still learning, and so are you.